Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to do something that is out of this world. It is unorthodox. We are going to be talking about the Hellraiser series, my view of it, my review. I should have fucking spelled it that way. Anyways, guys, if you're not into horror, that's okay. Just don't watch the video, or watch it, I guess. If you're somehow watching my channel and you're under the age of 13, I don't recommend you see this. This is going to be a little weird. It's going to be pretty scary or disturbing to look at, okay? But I did see the Hellraiser series recently. I've known about it since I was a little kid, but I obviously didn't see it. It looked really scary. You know, the guy with the fucking box and the spikes, that was really weird. So I've seen a lot of horror movies, not this one specifically, though. So in my opinion, this was pretty important that I mention. Now, I'd be remiss to say that that it isn't, you know, there is 8 movies to this, okay? So this is going to trudge on for a while, but we'll see how long I take with this video. And I just got to tell you guys that you got to bear with me, because this is the first time I've done anything like this, okay? Now, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so we have Hellraiser 1, okay? This was made in 1987. It was made with a $1 million budget, and I think that's pretty interesting, because ostensibly what we have here is a movie where the Clive Barker, the guy who makes this, makes a book that's supposed to sell people on this movie. He gets the funding by, I don't remember who made it, but the point is that he makes this on a small budget. It's based off of this book called The Hellbound Heart, and what I think is interesting here is that it is incorporating a lot of things from that book, but also reading into it a little bit. You know, the way that he displays it onto the film makes it, you know, seem kind of seamless. Not that I read the book or anything, that's stupid. Anyways, what it's about basically a husband, right? And that husband goes along and gets a new house, and then he has a wife, right? And she's the stepmother of the daughter, who's like 20 or whatever, right? So this daughter, Kirsty, right, has an uncle, Frank, but this Frank guy, who is this degenerative pervert, basically has an affair with his brother's wife after their wedding, I think, and basically they have a very close attachment to each other, lust-wise, and because of that fact, it plays in the future of this movie. Now, what he does is that he goes to Morocco, and when he goes to Morocco, he gets this other thing going on, and that is necessarily the lament configuration. He buys it from some Muslim or whatever. Once he gets that, he basically is able to then go into this room, the attic of the house that we see in the beginning, and from that attic he goes, sets candles around him, and he summons from the lament configuration something that is, you know, just fucking crazy. Now, he was sold on this by saying, well, this is going to push the edges of desire and pleasure and all that, and the whole point of Frank as a character is to say that this guy's an evil scumbag pervert who, you know, has, you know, gone through affairs, slept with a lot of women, so he's already gone after the earthly desires, and now he wants the next level. And then the guy who sells him this says, well, it will push the pleasure between pleasure and pain or whatever. And so he opens the lament configuration, which is the box in the bottom left of the screen, okay, from what you're seeing. And ostensibly what then happens is that he's able to get these spikes around him, and then the Cenobites come and they bring him to hell, if I remember right. So when they take him to hell, or the nether realm, whatever you call it, he's down there, and they treat him like shit, of course. And the problem is that when they're unpacking things, and by that I mean the wife and, you know, all the other characters, they go in the wife goes up to the attic by herself. And one of the things that's interesting here is that the dad, he's carrying a mattress, you know, cuts his hand with a rusty nail. The blood of the brother falls onto like the attic floor or whatever, and then basically what then happens is that Frank starts coming out. He comes off of this fucking like gooey, like, you know, like practical effect, and that's pretty interesting. And basically, as this happens, Julia sees this. Julia, the mother, the wife in this situation, is freaked out, obviously. But basically, because of the liquids that Frank produced and then mixed with the blood of the brother, he's able to somehow come back on the other side into real life and manifest himself into like some like bloody, like half, you know, like gooey corpse, okay? And then basically what he says is like, oh, I need a body, I need blood, stuff like that. So this stupid bitch, Julia, somehow falls in love with him again and gets a guy from a bar or whatever, brings him over to the attic. Frank hides. Frank eats him. And then when he eats them, he becomes into this guy in the center, right? This picture. where he can stand up finally, and he's, you know, like his body's put together other than the skin, right? So then he needs to kill somebody else to get the skin. So this happens like 3 times. He kills people, and as he kills people, he gets back into life more so. The effects on this are really cool. He looks like an Attack on Titan character, if you've ever seen that. You know, like the fleshy muscle stuff. And then you move on to I believe it's what was it again? Oh yeah. Okay. So eventually he somehow, or fuck it, I should just read the synopsis from Wikipedia to be easier that way. Okay. So Kirsty spies on Juliet bringing a man to the house. She sees everything and follows her up until the attic, where she interrupts Frank's last feeding. Frank then pins her against the wall. She throws the puzzle lament configuration puzzle box out of the window, which distracts them enough for her to run away. She gets the box and runs away. But then she wakes up in a hospital after she falls or whatever. She solves the box in the hospital. And then she summons Cenobites. Cenobites are basically these demons that are people that were brought to hell, but eventually were, I guess, able to cope with all the pain and shit. And now they're themselves trying to inflict pain on others. So they're like demons. Okay? And they all have their own little characteristics. They have like mutilated organs or, you know, bodily features that are messed up, which is all part of their torture, but they like it somehow. It's really weird. And so a monster shows up called the Engineer, which Kirsty narrowly escapes, right? And then Pinhead, who's the leader, explains that although she has been perceived as both angels and demons, okay, that's them, they are simply just explorers of another dimension seeking carnal experiences, okay? So this is all under the rationale of them expanding their earthly pleasures, which is fucking gross. But interesting nonetheless. Now, they try to force Kirsty to come with them to their realm, but she informs them that Frank has escaped from hell. In exchange, she makes a deal that in order for her own freedom, they get to catch Frank, and he has to confess to escaping them in order for the deal to be fulfilled. Kirsty returns home, where Frank has killed Larry being the dad, and has taken his identity by stealing his skin. Julia shows her what is purported to be Frank's flayed corpse in the attic, locked the door behind her. Then the Cenobites appear, and not fooled by the deception, demand the man who did this, allegedly. Kirsty tries to escape, but is held by Julia and Frank. Frank then reveals his identity to Kirsty, and when his sexual advances are rejected, because he's a pervert, remember, and he decides to kill her and complete his complete regeneration. Again, he wants to eat people so that he becomes normal himself. He then accidentally stabs Julia, you know, because she ducked and all that, and then sucks her up without remorse because, again, he's evil. Frank chases Kirsty into the attic, and when he's about to kill her, the Cenobites appear after hearing him confess to killing her dad. Now that they're sure that they're the one that they're looking for, they ensnare him with chains and tear him into pieces, okay? And then now that they took him back to hell, so the Cenobites decide to take Kirsty, but ripping the puzzle box from Julia's dead hands, Kirsty then sends him back to hell, okay? She reverses the box, and then they escape out of the house, okay? So that's the first movie's plot. She basically, and see, here's the thing that I find interesting from the movie. It is about the earthly pleasures, and I think that's fascinating because, you know, people obviously have their temptations, and what I find interesting, and that this takes it to the largest extent, where this guy is so sickly perverted and evil that he's willing to like do all this occult shit in order to like manifest more pleasure, and I think that's fascinating. And the other thing I find interesting are the Cenobites themselves, the design, the chains, all that I find interesting. I also find that the concept of a box, people summoning it, that's kind of like a Ouija board, that's interesting. I also like the dynamic of the family dynamic, and the effects were really cool, the flesh thing. So I would rate Hellraiser 1 an 8 out of 10. Obviously, it could have been done better. It's dated, it's over 30 years old, it's a small budget movie. You know, had the budget been higher, had it been made more recently, obviously that would have been better insofar as production quality, and that's the main thing I have against the movie. But the lore in and of itself is pretty interesting, and it's what I have to give Clive Barker credit for. The idea is pretty fucking, like, I don't know how he made this up himself. It's pretty cool. We move on to the second Hellraiser movie, Hellraiser 2, Hellbound, okay? Not an original name, but anyway. This one's interesting because if you were to see it, it's very similar to the other movie. It's made 1988. It's right after the first one, obviously. And I can tell you about the plot real quick. So basically, in the past, a British military officer called Elliot Spencer transforms himself into the Cenobite Pinhead after he opens the Lament configuration, which is that box I showed you earlier. Okay? So, shortly after her father is killed by Frank Cotton, Kirsty Cotton admits herself into the psychiatric hospital where she's interviewed by Dr. Chenard, the guy who looks like Jake Tapper, right? And his assistant tells basically goads her into telling the account of the events, but she sounds retarded. Obviously, it doesn't seem realistic at all what she's saying, and it's pretty ridiculous. And then she pleads for them to destroy the mattress where her mom had died on, as to not warrant another portal for Frank or somebody else to get onto the real world. So that's a pretty good, it's good for her to say that, but of course nobody's going to believe her because she sounds like a retard. But that's okay, that's just the circumstances here. Now, after hearing this story, Dr. Chenard, who is secretly obsessed with the Lament configuration, he's crazy himself, as the mattress brought to his home, it convinces a mentally ill patient to lie on it and cut himself with a straight razor somehow. The resulting blood, and this scene's really weird, the blood from that hobo or that, the mentally ill guy, frees a skinless Julia who looks like Frank. And, okay, and by the way, this looks like Frank, like, with the, all bloodied up, okay? So that's interesting. Now, it frees Julia from the Cenobite dimension. McRae, who is one of the assistants, having snuck into Dr. Chenard's house to investigate the claims of Kirsty because he was curious, witnesses the event and then runs away. Kirsty then meets a young patient who's like this 12-year-old girl, Tiffany, right? This blonde girl, who then has an aptitude for solving puzzles. Now, she's interesting to the story because, of course, the doctor that looks like Jake Tapper wants her to solve the box for him so that he can open it because he's retarded and he wants to do that. Obviously, that's not a good idea. So, later that night, Kirsty is awakened in her room by a vision of her skinless father, okay? And the father says that he's writing and he's in hell and he wants help, okay? McRae then arrives back in the hospital and informs Kirsty that he actually believes her. The two then decide to go to Dr. Chenard's house. Meanwhile, in the house, Dr. Chenard is seduced by Julia, who has brought more mentally ill patients to his home for her to feed and regenerate her body. Kirsty and McRae then arrive at his house. McRae is then killed by Julia, sucks him up or whatever. So now she looks virtually normal, and Kirsty is knocked unconscious. Okay, interesting. Chenard and Julia kidnap Tiffany, the little girl, and force her to unlock the Lament configuration so that they can enter the labyrinth-like world of Pinhead and the Cenobites. They enter, followed by Kirsty, who now possesses the Lament configuration. Pinhead and the other Cenobites find Kirsty and tell her she is free to explore, okay? So they give her a free hand. Julia betrays Dr. Chenard and leaves him to be transformed into a Cenobite by the god of hell, Leviathan. So she backstabs him and feeds him into the beast. So basically the whole point of her was she just wanted to come back because if you imagine her in hell, I guess in hell she was all like, flesh and bone. And that's obviously disgusting. So I guess she wanted to come back and get her skin back so that I don't find her attractive, but obviously you are a lot better off with your skin than without it. So that's part of the point. Now notice that she doesn't want to stay on Earth. She comes back. I think that's so that she could have dominion over the other people because she's fucking evil. Which, like a lot of characters in this movie franchise. Now, she betrays the Chenard guy, turns him into a Cenobite, okay? Now, Kirsty encounters Frank Cotton in the labyrinth, which is my favorite scene in the movie, by the way. He reveals that he tricked her by pretending to be her father. So that whole I'm in hell, help me, that was Frank pretending to be her dad. Pretty evil stuff. Brings her over. When you look at the scene, it's pretty interesting because in Hellraiser 2, every person that's in there gets their own sort of torment accustomed to what they did in life, I guess. And so his torture is seeing like these women coming in and out of these tunnels, and he gets to see the silhouette of their bodies. So he goes to touch them, lifts the blanket and they disappear, right? So they're all teasing him, right? So since he's a perverted guy, he wants to sleep with these women, but of course he can't even touch them because it's a torment. So that's his hell. But one thing he does have going for them is that he has his skin intact for some reason, and it shows. And then in the scene, I should have put a picture of this, but I forgot. It shows like a vanity mirror, like makeup and stuff that obviously has to do with vanity, one's looks. And there's Frank, right? And he sees Kirsty, right, opening the door, which is random, and then he reveals that he bullshitted her. Then It pretends to be her father, and then Frank basically puts a knife to her throat and like tries to you know um, you know do some stuff with her. Obviously, she doesn't really consent, and it's pretty gross, incest and all that. And basically, Julia appears out of nowhere, fucking stabs him in like the back, and rips his heart out, which is pretty cool. And wait a minute, no. Okay, let me go back. Basically, he's over there. Somehow there's a fire started. I forgot how. His skin's burning off. He's like, oh no, not my face. So I find that interesting because it plays into the vanity and all that. Him being into the sexual stuff. He doesn't want to look ugly, and it's just really cool character development. And after he burns and he's all like flesh, he's all skin and bone. No, fuck, he's like all Attack on Titan mode. He gets his heart ripped out, which is funny. And then she says no hard feelings, which is pretty cool. Anyways, Julia is then killed by a vortex that opens within the labyrinth, leaving only her skin behind. So she gets her skin sucked out or whatever. And then Kirsty and Tiffany reconnect and attempt to escape the labyrinth, but are ambushed by the Cenobite of Channard. Now, having become a Cenobite himself, Kirsty and then Tiffany flee and encounter Pinhead and other Cenobites. Kirsty then shows Pinhead a photograph she has of Elliot Spencer, who was him like in a past life, that she took from Channard's study, and then he gradually remembers that he was a human himself. Then all of a sudden, the Jake Tapper Cenobite comes out, and Pinhead and the other Cenobites try to fight him, but Channard easily overpowers and kills all of them, which was a pretty cool scene. Channard traps Kirsty and Tiffany. Kirsty finds Julia's skin and wears it to distract Channard, giving Tiffany enough time to solve the limit configuration. Then Channard dies, and the door to hell is finally closed, allowing them to leave. Okay. Elsewhere, two moving men are removing Dr. Channard's belongings from his house. One is pulled inside of that mattress from earlier in the movie, and the other witnesses from a mysterious pillar rise from within that mattress. Okay, so that's pretty crazy from the movie. I like it a lot, and that's probably because I think that it's also one of the other good Hellraiser movies, and as you can see, the quality of the movies goes downhill really quickly. So the fact that this still keeps up the continuity is a good thing. And then another thing that is interesting to point out here is that the production quality gets a little bit better in my opinion, and the plot is still continuous with the story overall. And then another thing that is important here is that Clive Barker is still involved, and I think Frank is still my favorite character in this movie series insofar as he's the most evil, and I think that's fascinating to look at. I also like how how being evil and all that plays, fucking screws them over in the end. All these characters, Frank, Julia, the Channard guy, etc., they get worse and worse and worse. And that's typically because, obviously, when you do evil, it never ends up well for you, right? So that's the point. And I think it teaches that in a good way. And it is horror, it's very disturbing. The chains on people is like really scary to me. So I thought that was a pretty good movie. I would probably rate it an 8 out of 10 as well. It's really good. I like the plot a lot. The thing with Frank, again, like him dying, it was really cool. So let's move on to the third movie. Hellraiser 3, 1992. So this was a couple years after. This was with a higher budget, by the way. Now, keep in mind these are different directors. So this is where they like to start veering off a little bit. Okay, now, this did have a box office of $12.5 million. So was it as much as they wanted? No. And I'll get to the plot here. Now, the poster is pretty cool. But what started on hell will end on earth. So a lot of this is in earth, whereas in the second movie it was a lot about hell. Okay. So let's go on. So this has a lot to do with the lore of Pinhead himself. Again, the story divulges a lot into Pinhead. This movie doesn't really have Kirsty in it, so this is its own kind of thing. Now, we have a club owner called J.P. Monroe, who's a womanizer and owner of a popular nightclub called the Boiler Room. So he buys this pillar of Pinhead, which is stupid. Then this ambitious young television reporter who's a dumbass, Joey Summerskill, sees hooked chains embedded in a teenage clubgoer in a hospital emergency room. So that's really weird. They come to life and tear the clubgoer to pieces. A young homeless woman, Terry, who comes in within the clubgoer, explains that the chains sprang from that puzzle box, which she pried from the pillar. Terry then gives the puzzle box to the reporter, Joey. While investigating the box's background with the help of her cameraman, Joey invites Terry to stay with her. Joey then discovers a videotape from one of Pinhead's victims, Kirsty Cotton, and in that video, she explains that the puzzle box is the only way to return Pinhead to hell. Pinhead remains dormant until Monroe has sex with a club goer called Sandy. Hooked chains drag Sandy into the pillar, and Pinhead absorbs her body. Pinhead then points out that they both use Sandy for their own purposes. Although the club goer the owner, is scared, he agrees to bring Pinhead more club members so that he can feed off of them, and in return, Pinhead promises Monroe more power and unnatural delights. So this is another interesting thing, because Pinhead is fucking evil, and he wants to get out of the pillar so he can, kill people and torture people, because that's what he likes to do. And the Monroe guy obviously wants the power and pleasure that he's being promised, and so like a dumbass, he follows what Pinhead is doing. Now, Pinhead in and of himself can't really do anything from that pillar, so as long as he keeps, his distance away from the pillar, like more than 6 feet, he can't even touch you or do anything other than talk to you. So what he could have done is just lock off the basement and just leave him there forever, right? But no, and people may think like, oh, what if he shot him? I think he tries to shoot him with a revolver and it doesn't do anything. So, again, he could have just left him there for eternity, right? Just fucking seal off the basement forever. But no, he plays into his own desires, and of course that gets him killed. Now, Joey has reoccurring nightmares. Ahada presumes her father died in Vietnam, and this is relevant in the future, okay? During one of these dreams, Spencer contacts Joey, explains his experiences in World War I, causing him to lose faith in humanity. He then gets the forbidden pleasures promised to him by the puzzle box. Then Pinhead, the original guy, Spencer, tells her that without his humanity to act as a balancing influence, Pinhead is completely evil and will indiscriminately wreak havoc on Earth for his own pleasure. In violation of the Cenobites' laws, to defeat him, Joey must reunite Spencer's spirit and Pinhead and use the puzzle box to return him to hell. Now, the whole vision of Spencer and Pinhead's human side is it's supposed to basically balance them out so that he's not completely evil, right? So I think that's a noble intention. A misunderstanding then leads Terry to believe that Joey has abandoned her somehow, and she returns to the arms of her ex-boyfriend Monroe. And Monroe tries to feed her to Pinhead by trying to seduce her, but she overpowers him somehow. Before she can flee, Pinhead talks her into feeding Monroe to him, promising to turn her into a demon in return. A Cenobite. Now free, Pinhead massacres the club patrons. Hearing the news reports, Joey goes to that club to investigate like a dumbass. So again, he tries to feed another person to Pinhead. Pinhead, like being the evil son of a gun, basically convinces her to feed the Monroe guy to him. Of course, the Monroe's guy like, oh, you betrayed me, and it's like, well, no surprise, you're dealing with an evil guy, and this fucker's like, oh yeah, why aren't you playing straight with me? It's like, well, I mean, you should have seen that coming, right? So Pinhead orders Joey to give him the lament configuration, but she escapes. Pinhead then resurrects several of his victims as demon Cenobites. Okay, and these are like these corny Cenobites, and let me go into detail. So he comes out, and there's like 100 people in the club. He kills them all through like a myriad of means, and this is pretty entertaining, right? But the point is that he gets some of these people to recruit as demons, as Cenobites, to help him track this Joey girl and get the box back. And it's like these retarded ideas like, oh, this Cenobite has a piston in his head, and this Cenobite shoots CDs out of his head. I mean, it's just completely ridiculous. And eventually she runs into a church and begs the priest to help her. Lacking in faith that demons could ever exist, the priest is appalled by the appearance of Pinhead. And Pinhead defiles the church and kills the priest. So Pinhead does some really gross stuff like mocking Jesus and breaking like the white stained the stained glass, all sorts of things. Pretty nasty stuff. So then he kills the priest. The Cenobites trap Joey on the construction site and prepare to torture her. She solves the puzzle box last second, and they're sent to hell. The box transports Joey into limbo, where she comes to face with the apparition of who appears to be her dead dad. The dad tells Joey to give him the puzzle box, and then when she, like an idiot, gives the box to her dad for some reason, the dad turns out to be Pinhead in disguise. Okay, which is a dick move, but of course, it's a pretty good twist. Pinhead ensnares her in machinery and prepares to transform her into a Cenobite. Spencer's limbo-bound spirit confronts Pinhead and forcibly fuses himself into Pinhead. Joey breaks free and uses the puzzle box, which she has somehow made into a dagger, to stab Pinhead through the heart, sending him back to hell. With Pinhead's humanity restored, the box returns Joey to Earth. She buries it in a pool of wet cement, I think, at a construction site. She then later there's a building at the end that shows like puzzles, like the puzzle box design in a building, which alludes to the fourth movie. So that's the third movie synopsis. I'm gonna tell you what I think about it. So this movie is interesting insofar as it kind of it bucks the trend. It is different. Now, one of the things I don't like is that it doesn't have the same actors from the first movie. Obviously, those actors are not relevant anymore, but still, I did like the original cast better than the subsequent actors for the most part. And one of the issues that I have with the movie is that it is, it's really corny, and that's kind of gay, honestly. You can tell it was made in the 90s, and that drags it down for sure. So I'd rate this movie a 6 out of 10. I think the whole concept of Pinhead being more of a sociopath is interesting because I'm into that sort of like character of manipulation and how far will evil go and all that. I find that interesting. So the conniving stuff is cool, but yeah, again, it's cornball material, so it's kind of whack in that aspect, which is why I'll rate it a 6 out of 10. We'll move on to the fourth movie. I'm taking way too long to explain these. We have Hellraiser Bloodline, which is a shitty movie. This year, the past, the present, and the future will all meet at the crossroads of hell. Anyway, this movie is basically about, you know what, this is really too complicated without reading the Wikipedia on this. So this was made by Kevin Yeager in 1996. You can tell it was from the 90s. The quality's kind of shit. Anyways, so it starts off in 2127. Dr. Paul Merchant, an engineer, seals himself into the space station where he basically gets these robots to solve the lament configuration for him, which kind of like bypasses the rule of somebody opening the box and then them going to hell. That's pretty confusing. But in the process, the robot gets destroyed, obviously. The guards break through the door and apprehend Merchant, who agrees to explain his motivations of opening the box to this guy called Brimmer. The film then flashes back to France in 1796, where his ancestor, Philippe Le Marchand, or whatever, a French toy maker, makes the lament configuration for the first time in history. For the commission of libertine aristocrat Duc de Lisle or whatever. Unbeknownst to Le Marchand, de Lisle's specifications for the box are supposed to make it a portal to hell. Right? Upon delivering the box, he watches as he and his assistant Jacques sacrifice a peasant girl and use her flayed-off skin to summon a demon, Angelique, through the box. Le Marchand runs home in terror, where he begins working on the blueprint for a second box, which is supposed to neutralize the effects of the first, which is retarded, right? Returns to the mansion to steal the box. Le Marchand then discovers that Jacques has killed Lisle and taken control over Angelique, who agrees to be a slave so long as he does not impede the wishes of hell. The pair kill Le Marchand, and Jacques informs him that his bloodline is now cursed for helping him open the portal to hell. Okay, so then this subsequently leads to 1996, which is the time of the filming of the movie. And his descendant John Merchant has built a skyscraper in Manhattan that resembles the lament configuration like after the end of the third movie, right? Seeing an article on the building in the magazine, Angelique then asks Jacques to take her to the United States where she can confront him. When Jacques denies her request, Angelique kills him, and Merchant poses a threat to hell. Okay? Angelique travels to the United States where she fails to seduce Merchant. Discovering the lament configuration in the building's foundation, Angelique quickly tricks a security guard into solving it, which brings in Pinhead. The two immediately clash, as Pinhead represents a shift in the ideologies of hell she's left behind 200 years ago. While Angelique believes in corrupting people through temptation, Pinhead is fanatically devoted to just pain and suffering and torture. Taking the jigsaw pill, okay? So the whole point is that they're both fighting each other over Dominion of Hell or whatever. And I'll just read the end of this because I don't give a shit anymore. The light is trapped within the box, killing Pinhead and his followers, thus ending Pinhead's existence, this time permanently. Okay, now, I took less time to cover this movie, thank God, because when I saw this movie at night, I was falling asleep. I really didn't like this movie at all. I thought it was kind of, it was kind of boring. I think they take this movie too seriously. All these different universes or timelines is annoying. 3 separate timelines is just too much to keep track of. The quality in this movie is dated. They have a really hard time of depicting the future. It looks like shit. And not as much Pinhead as I would like. He's a redeeming factor in these later movies as it goes on without the first original cast in them. So I really didn't like this movie at all. Way too complicated, and just for the crappy feeling I got from this movie. Here's a meme of McDonald's Happy Meal of Hellraiser, because it's just, it's like shit. Anyways, guys, I rate this one a 3 out of 10 or something. I don't even remember this movie. That's the big thing. Anyways, next. There's like 8 of these movies, so let's try to save time. Hellraiser 2000, Hellraiser Inferno. Now, this one I actually like. A lot of people hate on the movies after the third one, but I actually do like this movie. And I'll explain the plot, because the plot's kind of complicated, but it serves to the right purpose. So, directed by Scott Dickerson, I think, in 2000. This had a budget of $2 million. So this is about the same budget as the first movie. But they still make it kind of good, okay? Now, here's the plot. This won't take as long to explain, okay? Now, Jacob Thorne is a corrupt Denver police detective who regularly indulges in drug use, I think cocaine, and cheats on his wife during his course of duty as a cop. And at the scene of what appears to be a ritual murder, Thorne discovers a strange puzzle box, as you can see in this picture, which he takes home in order to indulge his fascination with puzzles. After solving the box, Thorne begins to have hallucinations, okay? But here's the thing about the movie. He doesn't see the Cenobites at the beginning, and I mean he does, but not like how you normally see it. So this is like a slow boil. You have to understand that. So after he sees the strange box, he starts seeing apparitions and bizarre hallucinations, such as being seduced by a pair of mutilated women and being chased by a creature with no eyes or legs. So when he sees these Cenobites, he thinks he's dreaming, so that's why he doesn't freak out immediately, but it is pretty weird. And basically, Thorne also makes a connection between the murderer that he just saw earlier that morning and a killer called the Engineer. And the plot of the movie is him chasing the Engineer around, and the Engineer trying to be elusive, and he's not catching him, and he's getting really confused, and he doesn't know what he's doing, and he's getting all scared. And the whole thing is like him like getting all schizo and being very confused as to what's happening, of course. Okay? And so he suspects this Engineer guy of kidnapping a child. Thorne then goes in search of the Engineer, who in return begins murdering Thorne's friends and associates, leaving behind one of the child's fingers at every crime scene. Okay, so he starts collecting the fingers, okay? While undergoing therapy for his hallucinations, his psychiatrist reveals to himself to be the Pinhead himself, the leader of the group of entities called the Cenobites. Okay, so the psychiatrist is in on it the whole time, which is really creepy. And he uses the puzzle box as the portal between their realm and the mortal realm. Pinhead informs Thorne that he's in fact been in the Cenobites' realm ever since he opened the box that morning to begin with, where they have been subjecting him to psychological torture the entire time for the various cruelties he has inflicted on others. The Engineer is just a manifestation of Thorne's own cruelty, while the child is a personification of Thorne's innocence, which has been slowly dying through his corruption, his hedonism, and violence. As hooks, chains appear to ensnare Thorne, Pinhead informs him that he will be subjected as an eternity of his torment for his sins. So as you can see there, that's fascinating, because the plot here is actually good. Now, was the budget high enough for this movie? No, but still, it was pretty cool. And the acting is pretty good as well. Thorne, the actor that plays Thorne, plays the smug asshole really well. The man, why are you doing this, man? Oh my god, I don't deserve this. It's really good. And I also find it interesting how he's the whole thing about him explaining losing his innocence, and the psychology behind Pinhead in this movie is really good. The acting from Pinhead is always good, and him being in hell the whole time is really cool, because it's like Groundhog's Day, but instead of having it be like benign, it's Groundhog's Day, but you're in fucking hell for eternity, so you have to live the same day over and over again. And what's always keynote about this is that I'm pretty sure after he sees Pinhead at the end, he wakes up in the bathroom, and he's like, oh my god, it was a dream. Thank God it was just a dream. So then he goes back to the office, and he starts talking about like a football game or something. It's small talk, and then he's all happy, not because his life is good, but because all that shit that he just went through was a dream, right? Picks up the phone, and it's Pinhead or whatever, and he wants to kill himself, right? So then he shoots himself in the face, and then he wakes up in the bathroom, and then and then he's like, okay, could it be a dream now? So then he goes outside, and then he realizes it's the same day over again. And I think it ends with him like screaming and shit. It's like, oh my god, that is such a good plot. It's such a good plot. He basically, I just that sort of torment is so cool because he's suffering so much. He's suffering so much, and he has to go through it over and over again. It's awesome. It's very lit. Anyways, this movie I would rate a 6 out of 10. Again, the budget was not good enough for this, and because of that, I have to dock a couple points. Anyways, moving on to the next movie. We have Hellraiser 2002, Hellraiser Hellseeker. Now, this one is pretty bad. This is another bad one. Direct-to-video, by the way, I think. So that, when it's direct-to-video, it has to be shit. Now, this plot is not that interesting. It's filmed in Vancouver. So we have Trevor Gooden survives a car accident that apparently killed his wife, Kirsty Cotton, so this is a return of her. When their car plunges off a bridge into a river below, Trevor manages to escape with his life, even though, and he tries to save his wife, but he can't. She dies there. Trevor manages to escape, but can't save her, obviously, and the police divers find both cars' doors open, but there's no sign of Kirsty being alive anywhere. 1 month later, Trevor wakes up from a coma in a hospital and realizes that his wife has been missing. But because of a head injury, his memory isn't clear as to what happened, and he cannot distinguish what is fantasy and reality because of his head injury. Trevor finds himself a prime suspect in the murder case of his wife because, and has numerous encounters with homicide detectives, Givens and Lang. Though the two detectives never appear to be together at the same place, many strange events befall him, including various hallucinations similar to what Thorne experienced, and several important events turning out to just be figments of his imagination. Trevor's also witnessed his friend Brett committing suicide in front of him, okay? Now, he's eventually brought into the police station where they're already suspicious of him, and taken to the basement by Detective Lang in order to identify a certain body. There it is revealed that Givens and Lang are just a single monstrous creature with two different heads. Trevor then runs away and enters a morgue. Just as he is about to uncover a dead body on an operating table, Pinhead appears and reveals the truth to Trevor. In reality, Kirsty is in fact still alive. Trevor cheated on his wife with many other women and tries to get rid of Kirsty by making her reopen the limit configuration, which she did. But before being taken away as prisoner forever, she made one last deal with Pinhead. She offered to give him 5 souls in exchange for hers, just like how she did in the first movie. She killed 3 of Trevor's mistresses and his friend Brett, and who was conspiring to kill her for her fortune. So, as you can see here, he basically tried to kill her for life insurance money or inheritance, and she knew of this, so she basically opened the limit configuration in order to get away with killing all of them, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. Trevor is in shock by the revelation from Pinhead and takes the covers off the body on the operating table, believing it to be Kirsty. The person on the table is not Kirsty, but actually him. He is the 5th soul, and this entire time, he's been in hell, living in limbo. Trying to rediscover his past, piece his life back together, was his punishment for his disloyalty to his wife and his inability to accept who he truly was, which was a bad person. It seems that she has pinned all the murders on Trevor and shot Trevor through the head while he was driving, leading him to crash the car in the river, making his death appear as a suicide. The film ends with Kirsty walking away from the car crash scene with the limit configuration in her hand. So that's interesting because basically what that movie does, it's pretty shitty. And the way I just read it makes it seem like it's actually a good movie, but the apparitions and the hallucinations, it all comes off kind of cheap. And I'm young, right? So I don't know what it's like to be around in 2002, but there's like some like weird vibe I get from movies from the 2000s that are cheap where it feels like I'm in fucking hell, which is the point of the movie, but like it actually, like, I feel it too. Like, I feel like, imagine you're in the 2000s and there's no internet like conceivable. There's no iPhones. The video games are garbage. You're going through the motions of life and it's all crappy and it feels so weird. It feels so awkward. And that's what I feel watching this movie. It feels so awkward to me. Like all the surroundings, the film quality, it's all shit and it's so bizarre to me. Okay? I don't know. It's completely weird. And for that reason, it is a 3 out of 10. It is a 4 out of 10. It is garbage. Let's say it's a 3.5. I don't know, man. It is weird. Let's say 3 out of 10. It's bizarre. Now let's move on to the other movie in this. What would you call it? A saga, anyway. Hellraiser 2005. This one was shit. This one sucked. This was made in 2005 by Miramax Films. Now, what you have to understand here is that, well, actually, I'm not going to explain that point yet. So, this is about... Fuck. Oh, wait, I have the order wrong. It's the... Fuck. No, shit. Did I skip a movie? I skipped a movie. Whoops. Anyways, okay, I'll just cover one of these. I'll cover both of the 2005 movies because they were made the same year. There's one movie about this journalist that goes to Romania that follows like a death cult, and the death cult tries to like circumvent life, and they become kind of like vampire zombies or whatever. And Pinhead comes and kills them all, and that movie was pretty bad. It was bad quality. Some fascinating parts in it, of course, but ultimately we have this movie, which is more appropriate. Hellraiser Hellworld, which has Henry Cavill, you know, Superman, and other than that, this movie was garbage. It's basically about these teenagers who go on this Hellraiser game, which is weird, and they go to this meetup of Hellraiser fans or something, and in that meetup, it's a regular party, but then they split up and like they all get killed off, and then the twist at the end is that they were just that the dad that I don't fucking know, but the point is that they were that they were buried alive, and that this dad basically was on the phone with them telling them what to believe in, and they thought it was true because they were like sleeping or something. That was a bad movie. That was a shitty movie. Both of them were pretty bad. Sub 5. Okay, below par. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the 2011 movie. I didn't know that I missed a movie. That's why I didn't cover either of them in depth. Don't worry, you didn't miss anything. Okay, so I skipped over Hellraiser Deader. You didn't lose much there. We'll move on to Hellraiser what was it? Revelations, made in 2011 with a $300,000 budget according to Wikipedia. This movie is a sleeper. Honestly, some people hate on this one for no good reason. So this was made. Okay, now I can tell you why they made it. So, they bought the rights. Miramax bought the rights to Hellraiser, I guess, and they have to make a movie every 10 years. If not, then the IP goes back to Clive Barker, and then they can't profit off the series anymore, something like that. So they had to make a bullshit movie really quick. And so, of course, Clive Barker wasn't really involved because I guess that was insulting to him or something. So we have Stephen Craven and Nico Bradley run away from home and travel to Mexico, where they filmed, and they're both like 18-year-olds or something, and they feel themselves engaging in several days' worth of drunken partying before disappearing. And the Mexican authorities return their belongings to their parents, including a video recording made by Stephen documenting their final moments with a puzzle box they get somehow. I don't know where they get it. I forgot already. A year later, the families of the two missing boys gather for dinner. Tensions rise when Emma, Stephen's sister, and Nico's girlfriend expresses frustrations for their lack of closure. She demands that their mother reveal the contents of Stephen's videotape, which she has been obsessively watching in private. Later, Emma sneaks a look at the tape, which documents Stephen and Nico picking up a girl in a bar. A flashback reveals that Nico murdered the girl while having sex in the bar's restroom, which is pretty bad, and later threatened to implicate Stephen in killing to force him to continue their vacation together. Nico later receives a puzzle box from a vagrant who offers it Nico an experience to find a new kind of sensual experience. So Nico's the skinny white guy in the bottom left. Weird name for a white guy, but anyway. So remember, this is like found footage in the beginning. It's really shitty. You know, I hate found footage for the most part. I guess it's a low budget movie, of course, but still. The scenes of them in Mexico is mostly garbage. It's like a really like, man, I hate it. Anyway, we move on, and sifting through the Stevens experience. I went over that. Wait a minute, fuck. Okay. Sifting through Stephen's effects, Emma finds a puzzle box that she recognizes from the video they were filming. When she tries to touch it and move it around, Stephen suddenly reappears covered in blood. The families try to rush Stephen to the hospital but discover that they've become stranded, and Stephen warns that the Cenobites are coming. Emma plays with the puzzle box again, causing intense sexual arousal. I don't even remember this from the movie. Emma attempts to seduce Nico's father. I don't remember this from the movie. And then has a deeply intimate conversation with Steven in his room as Steven caresses. Oh my. What the. What? Soon after Nico's father is killed by the same vagrant, Steven then goes downstairs, retrieves a shotgun, and shoots his father before holding the rest of the household gunpoint. Oh. Oh, okay, this makes sense. Another flashback reveals that Nico solved the puzzle box, opening a portal to the realm of the Cenobites, extra-dimensional sadomasochist led by Pinhead. Steven flees, but Nico is taken to the Cenobites realm to be subjected to extreme torture and mutilation. Later, while having, stuff with the prostitute, Nico is able to communicate with Steven through a puzzle box and convinces him to kill the prostitute in order to allow him to escape from hell, which is pretty gross. So emerging skinless and emaciated, Nico wants the prostitute's skin, right? Steven later kills several more prostitutes so their blood can be used to regenerate Nico, but Nico is unable to regrow his skin somehow. When Steven finally balks at helping him again, Nico kills Steven and takes his skin, which is pretty evil. Dying, Steven uses the puzzle box to contact the Cenobites to get revenge. Then Steven. So it turns out the Steven holding up the family hostage wasn't actually Steven. It was Nico in his skin. You know what I mean? And he's holding the family hostage with a shotgun and reveals to be Nico wearing Steven's skin, of course, who taunts the families. And he reveals that one of the reasons why he and Steven ran away from the home was because they were both angry at Steven's father and Nico's mother, who were secretly having an adulterous affair with each other. And he demands that Emma solve the box for him, intending for the Cenobites to take her instead of him, which is really evil, thus assuring his freedom. Emma then opens the portal under duress and summons the Cenobites, including Steven himself, who killed Nico's mother for speaking out of turn. Nico attempts to barter his life for Emma's, and while Pinhead notes that Emma has a dark sexual desire that he admires, he refuses and chooses to reclaim Nico for further experiments, which is pretty bad, and I love that twist. As Nico is taken away, Emma's father shoots and kills Nico in a dying act of revenge, displeased at having lost a victim. The Cenobites take Emma's mother as a replacement for Nico. Her father apologizes, then dies in Emma's arm. Left alone, Emma reaches for the puzzle box. So that's so here's the thing. This is a really troubled movie because not only is the budget terrible in this movie, but it is also, the actors by and large suck, but the plot in certain parts is really good, okay? That's a redeeming quality. Now, again, Doug Bradley, who normally is Pinhead, is not Pinhead in this movie, and you can tell, because the Pinhead in this movie has a fat face, and it's not a good look, okay? Now, here's the thing. When you look at the Nico character, I like him because he's a little scrawny faggot who, basically, he's not gay, but, he's a little twig, and he's a little conniving little bastard, and he screws over his friend, which isn't a good thing, of course, but it is pretty funny and pretty interesting to watch. And I also like how he basically tries to screw over all these innocent people, more or less, sort of innocent people at least, to barter his own life for theirs. And I love that. It's evil, and the evilness is entertaining to watch. So because of that, I would rate this movie a 4. So the production quality is terrible, and the acting by and large is bad, but there's redeeming features in this, and because of that, I'll give it a little bit of credit there. Now, we move on to the last movie. Thank God, this is taking forever, and I'm losing my voice because I'm being pretty loud here, if you haven't noticed. And we have Hellraiser 2018, okay? Hellraiser 2018 is a pretty interesting film, and it's a pretty modern one, too, which I can appreciate. So this is called Hellraiser Judgment, okay? Directed by Gary Tunnicliffe, who's supposedly a big fan. Now, this had a budget of $350,000, which is pretty similar to the last movie. So that's pretty bad, budget-wise. But they still make it's still a lot better than the other movie, to be honest. Now, in Hell, Pinhead from the Cenobite sect and the Auditor from the Stygian Inquisition, which I don't know what the hell that is, are discussing how to adapt their methods of harvesting souls in the face of advancing human technology that is making the configurations which are gateways to hell, obsolete. On Earth, three detectives, Sean and David Carter and Christine Egerton, are investigating a serial killer known as the Preceptor, whose murders are based on the Ten Commandments. Okay. Now this subplot's pretty uninteresting, but we'll go ahead with it. A connection with one of the victims leads detectives to Carl Watkins, a local criminal who went missing near an abandoned house. So Sean, one of the detectives, goes to the house and loses consciousness, waking up in the Stygian Inquisition's domain in hell. As the Inquisition prepares to hand down a verdict on Sean for his sins, the angel Jophiel intervenes and tells them to release him. Sean escapes the realm with a stolen puzzle box, and the auditor requests Pinhead's guidance on the matter. Sean and his brother return to search the house, finding no trace of hell on their Inquisition. The night he is then haunted by visions of the Cenobites and Hell's denizens who promise judgment and redemption to anyone who opens the box. So far in the movie, to dumb it down for you guys, because the way I read it seems confusing. Basically, this guy goes with this auditor, the auditor being the guy on the left, right? The guy on the left, he's a really cool new character, because basically what he does is that he hooks you up to this chair or whatever, and he makes you confess your sins before you go to hell, which is cool. And he writes it out of blood, I guess, which is, just kind of like a neat, horror thing. And you have to confess your sins. And when you confess your sins, I guess that blood goes to like a trowel of these like demon things, which are really disturbing, but I think that's the point, right? And so then this like fat ass like guy takes what he writes in a typewriter and then soaks it in like children's tears and like eats it, and if he throws it up, then I guess you go to hell. It's like really bizarre, but like when you watch it, it's like really disturbing. And then there's a whole scene of this fucking guy with like blades just fucking cutting into this guy for torture, and it is pretty bad. It is really graphic. And again, that's the point. It is gross, but it is the point of the movie, right? So let's keep going on the plot. So the detectives go to the coroner's office and find a cell phone with one of the Preceptor's victims stored in her body. Recording her final location with its GPS, they find the Preceptor's hideout. When Sean incapacitates Christine and reveals himself to be the killer, David deduces the Preceptor's identity and then meets with the coroner to find the building. Upon arrival, Sean disarms David and reveals that he is holding his wife Allison hostage, enraged that she's having an affair on him. He forces David and Allison to open the box at gunpoint, summoning the Cenobites and opening a gateway to their realm. Okay. Aware that someone from Hill would be coming to collect the soul after the escape, Sean attempts to offer Allison and David to Pinhead in exchange for himself. Pinhead tells him they will be dealt with for opening the box, but because a separate faction of Hell wanted his soul, no deal will be made. The auditor appears, telling Sean the Inquisition has found him guilty of his sins. Jophiel, the angel, intervenes again in protest to Pinhead and the auditor that Sean is part of Heaven's plan and instills fear into sinners. Pinhead arranges for Christine to kill Sean and spitefully dispatches Jophiel. As punishment, God, so like the actual God, expels Pinhead from hell and forces him to walk the earth as a mortal man. In a post-credit scenes, a group of Mormon missionaries in Germany approach a house and are captured by Stygian Inquisition. So this is interesting because it's so confusing. Ugh, my God, the plot itself is like so weird, but when you see it, it makes a lot more sense. But the critique I have for this movie is that the budget is obviously too small. It wasn't a critical success, so we'll see if there's actually a sequel made, as well as you have to consider that the plot is kind of confusing, but the auditor is a good addition, and the whole angel thing is kind of interesting too, and the ending is pretty good of Pinhead being immortal again. And you would think like, well, he's out of hell, so that would be a good thing, but no, because not only is he a hobo, but he also doesn't get to torture people, and that's the whole like thing that he lives for, which is really messed up, but still. Okay, so the plot's really confusing, but ultimately it is cool. Well, there's also some scenes that are redeeming, like for example, Pinhead, he basically chains up the angel, which is an interesting concept, but yeah, other than that, I mean, this movie was kind of meh. I'll rate it a 5, I guess. And here's one of the problems with the series is that since there's 8 movies, it's so hard to tell what is what. Like I literally skipped over like 2 of the movies and I didn't even notice in the slides. Which goes to show that like 5 of these movies are unnecessary. You know, you could get rid of over half the series and you wouldn't miss much. Which is a huge problem with the whole structure of this film franchise. And that is honestly too bad. But that's the way it goes when you make so many movies and half of them being shit. And so, you know, if you were to say like, okay, if you get the best of the Hellraiser series, you would probably get like a really solid classic series. But because you don't have that and you have a ton of garbage in there, like Hellraiser Judgment, well, not garbage, but you know, like subpar stuff, you end up with a mediocre series overall with a lot of garbage in it. And that's honestly unfortunate. But guys, now that we're closing in on 50 minutes, I do have to wrap this up, of course. As a whole, I would rate the series a 5. It's held down immensely by the shitty movies that are within it, and I think at some points the gore gets too far. And again, I'm not a scaredy cat or anything. I'm honestly like, it is interesting to see. It is interesting to see. It is interesting to watch the you know, the killings and all that, but you know, it gets to a point where it's distasteful and it is getting way too gross. Oh fuck, okay, that's my Twitter. Anyways, yeah, I mean, I felt like recording this video because, okay, wait a minute, let me rate the series, the entire 8 movies, as a 5 out of 10. I'm playing it safe. I do appreciate the series for what it is. Pinhead is a horror classic, but has a lot of garbage in there, okay? And let's also keep in mind that what else should I say? See, Pinhead's the main thing that holds this thing together, and Doug Bradley's like a 70-year-old guy, so we'll see how long that lasts, you know? And I honestly feel as if there is sort of a deficit in people that are willing to take the franchise forward, and that's probably going to take it down. But guys, this is going to be my Hellraiser series review. I honestly got to tell you guys that I've been planning to do this for a while. I started watching the series like 2 months ago, and you know, the Hellraiser series has really changed my view on the world, which is weird for fiction movies. But the thing is here is that it sort of puts a spotlight on hedonism as a concept and how it really leads you to nowhere, and the carnal pleasures aren't a good thing. And this, it seems like an extended metaphor for people that seek the earthly pleasures and even will be willing to go to hell for them, and you know, obviously they regret it for the most part unless they're truly evil like Pinhead. So I find that very cool. I also like how the villain Pinhead has some, you know, he does have some valid reasons as to why he does what he does. You know, of course, he has a traumatic past, which I like. You know, I like villains that you don't feel empathy towards, but you can understand where they're coming at, which is kind of why I like Thanos, because you know, the Malthusian predicament is a real one. So yeah, I do like how Pinhead said, you know what, you know, you're evil and I will torment you in a way that you tormented others. You know, that's cool. And I also like the whole Machiavellian, like, okay, I want to win for my own right, so I will cut corners and I'll be like cynical asshole to do it. And when it bites the characters in the ass, it is satisfying to watch. So because of that, I think that that this is a pretty good series. It implemented a lot of things too. So I honestly really have to say that I'm very, very pleased that I watched the whole series. I honestly did spend a lot of time on this, but to be fair, this review isn't perfect. This is my first review. I decided to do it on Google Slides because I didn't want to, you know, most reviews on YouTube use film videos, like videos from the movies, but not only do I not know how to edit that well, it would also be a pain in the ass. Like, for me to upload this video will only take an hour because that's how long it takes for me to record the video, and then other than that, it's not that long for me to put the tags and all that. But yeah, I didn't want to take the time to do that. And by having the slideshow, I ultimately thought that you'd be able to more or less get an idea of what I'm talking about. And so yeah, this doesn't take too long to make. So that's the whole point of this. And I honestly got to tell you that I just want to get feedback as to how you think that I can do this better. I want to see how you guys think I should manage the channel. Because, yes, I've been talking about politics pretty much nonstop this entire time. And I've been doing this largely because, obviously, politics is my main hobby. But and prior to the election, I thought, geez, after this election, politics is gonna get a lot more boring, and it turned out to be more boring than I imagined. Now, the channel has been able to survive past the election because of because of the ensuing event, the Capitol riot or protest, whatever you want to call it, the first 100 days and all that. But as things are winding down, I was thinking I might as well do other shit, other stuff with my time, because I do have a lot of free time, and I have been getting to reading books and all that, and I've also on the side have been watching movies, and part of that has been watching the entire Hellraiser series this year. So because of that fact, I felt the need to necessarily review it, because I don't know anybody in my life that has seen the Hellraiser movies, or at least all of them. So I can't really talk to anybody in person. So I just wanted to make a long format video on my thoughts on the series, because of course I want to see whether or not this gets a lot of views. I want to see what you guys think about it. So guys, I am really interested in your feedback. If this gets enough views, I'll probably make more videos like this. But if it dies and it doesn't get views, then I'll probably not make more videos about movies. And so because of that, I really do want to thank you guys for watching. If you've seen it all the way through, this entire hour-long video, I got to thank you for being patient with me, because God, I know I want to end this video too. So I just want to explain everything. Hopefully I get to make more videos that aren't political, because I want to, I just have a diverse channel insofar as material, because then it'll have more, longevity, and I want to be able to talk about stuff that interests me in general, not just politics. So we'll see how this ends up. I can make a series of videos on other horror movies, action movies, other stuff like that. So guys, anyways, I want to thank you guys for watching all the way through. If you have, like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't. Comment down below specifically what are your favorite movies of of the series. If I had to make a ranking last minute, I would say I like the second movie the best, then I like the first movie the best, and then I like the third movie, then I like the one with the thorn guy, and then I like the one with the then I like Judgment, then I like the 2011 one, then the 2005 one in Romania, and then the other one, and then the fourth one. That all makes sense if you paid attention. But anyways, yeah, the first three movies were honestly my favorite ones, probably. The first two were the really good ones. Anyways, guys, finally, bye. Jesus. Okay, bye. Okay, that's done. Finally, the video is over.